Mid-February 1943. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel sits at his forward command post, just miles from the Tunisian frontier. Outside, the Afrika Korps soldiers cheer their triumph at Kasserine Pass. Inside, Rommel pens a terse letter to his wife, Lucy. He describes American troops as inexperienced, poorly trained, and prone to amateurish blunders, mistakes that would have earned them courts-martial in any European army. Over 6 days, more than 6,000 Americans were killed or wounded. Entire battalions surrendered, equipment was abandoned, and units collapsed under pressure. It reminded Rommel of the French rout in 1940. He believed the American spirit was fracturing before his eyes. If Germany struck again within weeks, he wrote, they could drive the Americans back into the sea before they learned to fight properly. His report reached Berlin under the clear headline, "Exploit American weakness immediately. Give them no time to adapt." Rommel's judgment wasn't shaped by prejudice, but by observed reality. At Kasserine, the Americans had shown critical failures. Commanders dispersed their forces, radio discipline evaporated under fire, and there was no coordination between infantry and armor. When German panzers charged, American units broke and fled without orders, triggering panic across the front. Second Corps commander, Major General Lloyd Fredendall, had set up his headquarters 70 miles behind the lines in a mountain canyon. He directed the battle by telephone and radio, ignorant of the ground truth. His contradictory orders sowed confusion that German intelligence meticulously recorded. American equipment was decent, and when cornered, the soldiers fought bravely. But leadership was inept. These men had never faced the Wehrmacht before. They were learning warfare in real time, and their poor apprenticeship was on display. Rommel calculated that it would take at least 6 months to correct these leadership flaws, a full year to build effective doctrine. If Germany launched a new offensive in late March, he believed the results would mirror Kasserine. German armored tactics had crushed France in 6 weeks, driven the Soviets back in 1941, and twice forced the British to retreat across North Africa. The key was concentration of force at a weak point, a breakthrough by tanks, and a rapid exploitation of the breach. Most armies fought static defenses. German mobility bypassed them. At Kasserine, the Americans had followed the same script. Dig in, wait to be attacked, then crumble. Rommel studied the terrain around El Ghouta in central Tunisia. Rolling hills, sparse cover, open approaches, ideal for panzers. If the Germans struck there in late March, American troops would still be reeling from Kasserine. The psychological edge alone would decide the battle. Berlin approved the plan. One more blow, and American morale would shatter. Then forces could be shifted north to block the British, while the Americans were shipped home in defeat. Early March brought a shake-up. On March 6th, Lieutenant General George S. Patton, Jr. took command of Second Corps, the same force that had collapsed at Kasserine. Patton's arrival was a spectacle. His motorcade barreled in with blaring sirens. Ivory-handled revolvers gleamed on his hips. He didn't offer suggestions. He issued ultimatums. The days of the soft American soldier are over, he declared. He fined officers for missing ties and regulation helmets in desert heat, not out of vanity, but to instill a professional mindset. He publicly reprimanded soldiers who failed to salute. German intelligence sniffed skepticism. No single general could overhaul an entire corps in 3 weeks. Patton might tighten discipline and stir morale, but teaching new doctrine? Impossible in a month. Rommel, weakened by stomach pains and exhaustion, reviewed the El Ghouta assault plan one last time before handing operational command to General Hans-Jürgen von Arnim. Every assumption, American defensive rigidity, panic under armored assault, lack of coordination, seemed sound based on Kasserine. March 22, 1943. Under a pale dawn sky, the 10th Panzer Division and Italy's Centauro Division mass for the assault on American positions near El Gitar. German commanders brief their troops. The Americans will form static lines, call for air support that won't come, then break under the weight of mobile panzers. The Panther's 75mm guns can punch through Sherman armor at 2,000 yards. The Shermans need 500. The artillery plan is to saturate enemy emplacements with time-on-target barrages, forcing defenders to freeze. Coxswain Clark's note, the technical edge is decisive. March 23, 1943, 0600 hours. Lead elements of the 10th Panzer Division roll forward against positions held by the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One. Visibility is perfect. Dust stirs in the tank tracks. Everything aligns with the operational plan. Then American artillery bursts to life. Not haphazard ranging rounds, but coordinated salvos across multiple batteries. Every gun battery lifts hills and hedgerows in a single heartbeat. German crews inside Mark Verse scramble as shells detonate among their ranks. Radio crackles with cries for medevac. The Germans expected suppression. They did not expect precision. American forward observers, skilled and experienced, adjust fire with unerring accuracy. Casualties mount, but the 10th Panzer presses on. German commanders order a push through the barrage to close the distance. Instead of melting away, the Americans hold hidden anti-tank guns in overlapping fields of fire. When German tanks pass, the Americans unleash flank shots that rip tracks and tear hulls. By mid-morning, the panzers have pierced 2,000 yards of the first defensive belt, earned ground, but not the route they anticipated. Still, the Americans refuse to flee. Instead, they perform fighting withdrawals, sliding back to prepared secondary positions, reforming their lines and pouring fire into German infantry. For the men of the Big Red One, El Gitar is redemption. These are the same soldiers who tasted humiliation at Kasserine Pass. Now they meet German panzers with cold professionalism and fierce determination. German radio intercepts reveal calm, focused American voices. Officers relay clear orders. Artillery fires on command. Infantry reports coordinates and advances methodically. There's no panic in the chatter, none of the chaotic pleas heard 2 weeks earlier. By noon, German armor grinds to a halt 3,000 yards in. The expected breakthrough has stalled. General von Arnim studies the reports in his Tunis headquarters. Casualties are high, objectives unmet. The terrain is no different from Kasserine's approaches, but the defenders fight with coordination German commanders had never witnessed. Artillery strikes blindside panzers. Infantry counterattacks hit pockets of advance units. Intelligence notes a pattern. The Americans have learned to neutralize German strengths. March 24th, von Arnim advises cancellation. The offensive is costly and fruitless. Orders go out, pull back to prepare defenses. Meanwhile, German intelligence scrambles to explain El Gitar. Captured American soldiers speak of a transformation. No new weapons, no massive reinforcements, no months of retraining. All happened in 3 weeks under Patton's command. Patton's recipe was radical simplicity. First, purge hesitant leaders, replacing them with aggressive officers. Second, revolutionize doctrine. Defense became active spoiling attacks, counterattacks at the first sign of assault, artillery massed for overwhelming counter-battery fire. Third, overhaul mindsets, Reward bold action with praise and promotion. Punish caution with relief from command. Speed and aggression became the gospel. German commanders realized their doctrine. Concentrated armor strikes, static defense routes, no longer guarantees victory. American anti-tank teams create deadly crossfires. Their artillery, timed to the second, suppresses German infantry before panzers arrive. Retreats transform into organized withdrawals, preserving unit cohesion. Rommel, now back in Germany on sick leave, reviews data from Tunisia. He had launched his final North African offensive at Medellin on March 6th. The same day, Patton took over, and it had collapsed within hours against coordinated British anti-tank fire. He departed Africa with jaundice and exhaustion overtaking him, never to return. Before leaving, he revised his February assessments. The Americans had closed their gaps in record time. No longer could any attack assume American collapse. 3 days after his departure, Rommel's warnings were vindicated at El Guitar. But he heard the news from Germany, far from the front he helped carve. 2 months later, on May 13, 1943, Axis forces in Tunisia surrendered. Over 250,000 troops laid down arms. In 90 days, the Americans went from humiliation at Kasserine to triumph in North Africa. German generals pored over after-action reports. They adapted their doctrine, cautioning defenders that Allied offensives would combine rapid armored thrusts with concentrated artillery backed by an unrelenting, aggressive spirit. When Patton's 7th Army landed in Sicily on July 10, 1943, those warnings proved prescient. Americans raced up the western coast, reaching Messina on August 17th, faster than any British advance. In June 1944, Rommel found himself defending France against D-Day landings. He deployed mobile reserves close to beaches, convinced that American forces would erupt inland at top speed. His defensive preparations were undermined by higher command, but his judgment on American tactics was sound. Material superiority fused with aggressive doctrine made static defense almost impossible. After the war, Allied interrogators gathered testimony from German generals. Field Marshal Albert Kessler and Panzer Commander Hasse von Mantoul confessed their grudging respect. They had expected an American army that would crack like the French or early Soviets. Instead, it learned faster than any adversary in 6 years of war, identifying weaknesses and fixing them within weeks. American artillery coordination, they agreed, made German tactical doctrine obsolete. By 1945, the force that flinched at Kasserine had become one of history's most effective armies. Rommel's February letters, mocking American softness, seemed inconceivable by the war's end. Leadership trumped experience. Doctrine outweighed equipment. Aggression beat technical superiority. When Americans and Germans clashed from Tunisia to Normandy to the forests of Germany, doctrine, America's doctrine, proved decisive. The 90 days from Kasserine Pass to Tunisia's capitulation changed the century's course. In that crucible, the arsenal of democracy found its sword. German generals stopped underestimating American soldiers because by May 1943, they understood the man in the foxhole was not a tourist. He was the architect of Germany's defeat. If you'd like more stories like these, please like and subscribe.